queer life kind of mirrors that liminality, living between worlds, crossing thresholds, reinventing identity, kind of teetering the line between what's accepted and what's not. And I think that's like a really interesting tie-in. Welcome to our Solstice Series. I'm Jerry.
And I'm Caitlin.
Tonight we step into SOW-in, the turning of the wheel, the thinning of the veil, and the time to honor who we've been and who we're becoming.
Very exciting.
Very exciting.
Yeah, so this is going to be our series, kind of our short series here on the channel. So with the different seasons and holidays, mostly pagan holidays, we'll be doing short episodes like this that have to do with that. Little fun, little whimsical. I'm excited. We're dressed up today in our Halloween best. Why not?
Our sweaters.
Yeah. I've got you can't see all of it, but I've got my Sanderson sisters spirit jersey or whatever they call it. But yeah, so we've got our Halloween best on. I've got my Halloween mug. I'm drinking some green tea. It felt appropriate. It's also kind of we were talking before we really started the recording. It's kind of a gloomy day today. It's been raining here in the LA area.
The first rain really in a while too.
Yeah, and like rain. This is not just a drizzle. We've had like flooding. A couple drizzles. It's Yeah, it rained today. It was crazy. I was like, oh wow. It knocked over a bunch of my Halloween decorations, the wind and everything. Like,
oh my gosh.
So there you go.
Well, I guess that kind of leads us in too, since we're talking about the thinning of the worlds and all of that kind of sucks. So we're kind of starting the wheel of the year over right now.
Yeah, we're starting the dark half of the year. So this is kind of the celebration of when now we're going to be having the darker half. There's not going to be as much light, conserving energy, really reflecting on the past 6 months. And then connecting to those who have passed,
our ancestors.
Well, our ancestors, which is really interesting because, I feel like once you start doing research on this kind of thing, you really see the crossover in all different cultures. It's so interesting to me how no matter where you are in the world, so many ancient cultures had so many similar celebrations. So we get like Samhain with the pagan Celtic religion. And then you also have Dia de los Muertos. And they're so similar. And it's kind of like the same idea, the thinning of the veil, similar time of the year. They're only a few days off from each other.
And a lot of those celebrations were done purposely. Like with Catholicism and Christianity, they actually purposely aligned the holidays with pagan holidays in order to make the conversion to Christianity easier for people and imperialism. We see how that transforms over time, but even going all the way back to like Mesopotamia and all those kinds of things, we see the honoring of these different times of the year and the returning to the what's it called? Like the returning to the earth-based honoring with the cycles of the seasons and all of that.
Yeah, and the lunar cycles. And it just goes to show you how like connected even back then we all were. They didn't know that they were connected, and yet somehow they all seem to figure out the same system of like, really paying attention to the earth and the cycles of the moon and the sun, and they all came to the same conclusions. Like this time of year meant the same thing. Even before we had colonialism and Christianity and Catholicism, you know what I mean? That spread so wide across the globe, the holidays were still, or not, you wouldn't always call them holidays, but those times of years were still celebrated very similarly throughout all different cultures.
Well, it's all connected to the harvest. Yes. So during the winter, or this kind of like fall winter that we're getting into right now, the next one's being Yule. But with Samhain, we're talking about like this sacred transformation work. Kind of turning within and rekindling the fires for that renewal.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, like talking about like the liminal time and space that we're in and the honoring of the ancestors. I mean, given that we're talking about queerness too, like queer life kind of mirrors that liminality, living between worlds, crossing thresholds, reinventing identity, kind of teetering the line between what's accepted and what's not. And I think that's like a really interesting tie-in to something that I don't hear people talk quite a lot about.
Yeah, you can really see why the queer community really gravitated and grabbed onto Halloween in particular
Mm-hmm.
as a holiday, right? Because even with the ancient Celtic practice, you did have people dressing up. So costumes do come from there.
Mm-hmm.
But costumes had a very specific purpose back then, which was to ward off the evil spirits and like fairies, because they believed that the fairies were more prevalent during that time as well as the spirits, right? And fairies could trick you and they could trap you. And so they thought, okay, well, if we dress up as these scary monsters and these things, we'll scare the fairies, they won't take us. Right. So it kind of started, costumes kind of started in that
Mm-hmm.
way. But because you saw like that day being like a day of like inhibitions and or like releasing your inhibitions and like all of these things, you can see how eventually when our society was looking for an outlet and a way to express themselves when they couldn't on the daily, Halloween really became a good outlet for that, right? Like it became socially acceptable to dress up in costumes of any kind, not just scary things, right?
Mm-hmm.
They really kind of co-opted that and made it their own, which I actually didn't really know a lot about until we did the research for this episode. I didn't realize how much drag and queer culture influenced the progression of Halloween costumes where we have today. Because prior to queer culture stepping in and really making Halloween part of our culture and using it in that way, costumes really were kind of very basic and they were primarily just kind of scary. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to dress up really cute. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was really interesting to learn about that. And you can really see how, like, having that day, and it's so funny because it's like, it's different, right? They used it in a different way, but it actually still comes to the same thing. Like, it's still celebrating a change of some sort, and it's still celebrating, like, releasing things and coming into your own. And
And it's an opportunity, I think, to over the years for people to experiment where they couldn't before.
yes.
Like costumes can be both protection and revelation,
Hmm.
a mask that makes truth possible. Just kind of like wearing like drag or stepping into fantasy. It's like this radical act of freedom
Hmm.
where sometimes we don't get that,
Yeah.
especially historically where things have meant, you know, being out and about could risk, you know, playing into that fantasy of Halloween allows for more freedom where
Mm.
we could have been arrested in certain
Right.
time periods and things like that, which I think is really interesting too, considering Halloween is known as gay Christmas now,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
didn't know until I was researching this up for this episode either.
Yeah, it's crazy. I really did I had no idea. And it was there was something about, oh my gosh, it was, I think it was like they had finally decided, especially during Halloween time, but like around that time where they were finally okay to let women wear pants,
Hmm.
was all that was kind of during that same time from what I was reading, was like the crossover of like, well, wait a minute. Now, as long as we're not making a nuisance, as long as we're not being obscene in public, you know, whatever, we have this opportunity. And so it just evolved even quicker. I just find the whole thing really interesting. Who knew? Who knew? It's so funny how much our history classes don't teach us.
I
When it
mean,
comes to queer history and POC
absolutely.
history,
It's just, I mean, it's suppressed. But what I found was really interesting too is like, I mean, I when I think of Halloween, for me being in Los Angeles, I think of West Hollywood's Halloween
mm,
celebration and the freedom that has come with that over the years of having a massive parade in the streets and
yeah.
all different types of representation and costumes and play, and just kind of known to be the place that you go to party. What I didn't know is how big had the Halloween street party in the 70s and 80s with the Castro in up in San
Mm,
Francisco was. And I didn't realize that that was like such a big event, being that in my 30s living in Los Angeles, so I wasn't around in the 70s and the
Right.
80s, but I thought that was some really cool history that I wasn't aware of
Well, and
either.
mirrors it mirrors like the original rituals because you had back then still the same thing. They would have giant events and bonfires and music and dancing and all of these things, right? It was a celebration. It just continues, right? In different ways it evolves and continues and brings life, you know, new things. It's just very interesting. The whole thing was so like when we first decided to do it, it's like, how do we tie in? We were both so excited to do like holidays and solstice and pagan things. And I was like, how does that tie in? And then here it ties
Here we
in
are.
even more than I would have expected, which is amazing.
I think
Um,
Michael Bronsky, who wrote Culture Clash: The Making of Gay Sensibility in 1984 is when it was published. I think he says it well, and I'll just read it directly. The queerest night of the year, where transformation, parody, and resistance converge.
mm,
And I think that also speaks to kind of that liminal space, the converging of worlds, the things that are often put and hid in the darkness
mhm.
that are able to come to light in costume and play and have that visibility where typically the community hasn't had it. And
Yeah,
seeing the converging of modernism and what's socially acceptable to what's typically not, but on this one night, anything goes.
right. Yeah. Yeah. What was I gonna say? We had put on our notes as well the parallels for like masquerades and stuff
Hmm.
too, and how kind of the same thing, right? Masquerades gave people and Halloween very much the same thing, right? You're wearing a costume. It really gave people the ability to have one night of like fantasy, and it was kind of a radical act of like freedom and joy, right? Which is kind of the whole overarching theme of our podcast this season. But, you know, where gender nonconformity used to mean that you could get arrested in on this one night, you know, or during like some sort of masquerade, you had that ability to do that and no one thought twice about it. You know what I mean?
Well,
It's
and
like,
that's the whole idea of a masquerade is that these
mhm.
like social hierarchies and gender norms are like playfully overturned.
Yeah.
And we see this kind of across the board, which is, I just think it's incredibly interesting. The idea that like this one night where quote hell breaks loose,
Yeah.
and how our culture like socially accepts it just in this like specific time of year versus any other time.
Yeah. We were talking about how, aside from just the costumes, right? And
Hmm.
like the freedom that the costumes gave us as a community, and the spaces and everything at the, you know, before we had a lot of the rights we have now, and even probably now when we're feeling like a lot of our rights are in jeopardy. But it's also going back to kind of the original idea of Samhain is the nights are also rooted in like survival and self-expression and
Hmm.
reclamation. I think we don't use reclamation a lot to mean you hear reclamation a lot when we talk about like land
Hmm.
and things like that.
Or
We
like
talk
certain terms, like reclaiming certain terminology.
right, exactly. But you don't think about it a lot. I don't think a lot of people think of it in terms of themselves,
Hmm.
reclaiming your own person and like who you are and maybe the parts of you that you've hidden or ignored. And Halloween really does. There's this sense you can feel it almost in the air, like the whole month now. I feel like even before we get to the day, people have this like feeling of like, oh, I can be anything, I can do anything. And I don't think that that's just a coincidence. You know what I mean? I think it is kind of indicative of this time of year. Maybe it is the veil being thin, right? But there is this feeling of like you kind of can, like anything is possible. Like you
Hmm.
really can kind of reach for the stars. It's supposed to be a very like powerful time for like manifestations and things like that as well. Grounding work.
Well, and that goes back to this is the not January 1st in this wheel of the year kind of cycle, but this is technically the new year. It's that time to like, yeah, like that time to turn inward, to release, to see what's next and transform. And I think transformation is so integral to queerness,
Yeah.
learning about ourselves and being able to transform who we are into who we want to be.
Yeah.
And then also, I think there's something about not having to be so afraid of the dark, because
Like when you're in the closet.
yeah, exactly. You're in the closet and, it seems, and I think people are afraid of the closet.
Mhm.
People are afraid of what's in there.
Mhm.
What hides in the closet, scary things, monsters. We're scared of what's under the bed,
Yeah.
right? But the reality of queerness is often we are those things for people.
Mm.
But we don't have to be scared of the dark when you
Yeah.
actually know and are able to embrace that. And I think Samhain really gives us the opportunity to not just embrace transformation, but also honor where we're from.
Yes. Yeah, honor the people who came before us, you don't have to think about I think people maybe tend to get stuck on the idea of like honoring your ancestors as like your direct
Hmm.
ancestors, right, that are related to you, but it doesn't have to be that. You could honor the ancestors of the queer movements, right? You could honor all the people who came before us and really like made a lot of what we have now possible. Um,
I love this idea because it speaks
yes,
to chosen lineage. We
exactly.
talk about chosen family a lot, like the people that surround us that become our family, our friends, our family for a lot of queer folks. But we don't talk about chosen lineage. And that's not to say we don't honor the people that we're directly related to either. Maybe you do have someone who is part of your queer lineage that we
Mm,
want to honor in this time and space as well.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's so much you can do with that. I would encourage people to like, if nothing else, take away from this episode, really think about the fact that like you don't have to be in the box, right? No matter
Hmm.
what that thinking is. So really look at like this time of year and everything it could mean and think outside the box. Think of all the different possibilities during this time. And yeah, if you don't have ancestors that you particularly want to honor right now, then that are like related to you, yeah, look at your culture. Are you queer? Look at the queer culture. Who made it possible for you to be who you are today, right? And honor them. And that could be different people for all of us, right? Like I'm sure a lot of trans folks would want to look at the women in Stonewall, right?
Hmm.
And maybe honor them. And there's a lot of different ways that you could look at that and go about it. But yeah, there's so many ways that you could celebrate during this time of year.
And I think, like, with that being said, too, like, when we think of, I think when we talk about Samhain, people think of like Wicca and rich witchcraft.
Mm,
And you can go that direction, and by all
yeah.
means, if it floats your boat, do it. But I think also considering that rituals mean more than just like a magic spell here. Like we have modern queer rituals that are really beautiful in ways to honor people of the past, people of the present, like drag performances, drag memorial
Hmm.
performances, altar spaces that don't have to look necessarily in a spiritual sense, though they can, but even just poetry, reading from an author that has spoken to you, volunteering at
Hmm.
like the LGBT Center, other places that maybe need volunteers to give back to the community during these kinds of times.
Yeah.
Maybe a release letter where you write to somebody who maybe yourself even of
Hmm.
things you want to release for the new year, or someone that you've lost in the past that you'd like to say something to, and burning it or in your journal or whatever.
Yeah, this is a great time of year to start doing fire rituals.
Hmm.
Even if you're not super spiritually inclined, even if you're not thinking about it in like a witch, pagan, Wicca type of sense, if nothing else, it can be really cathartic to write everything out and then burn it and then watch it
Absolutely.
to go away. Even if it's like all the fears that are holding you back and all the self-doubt and the negative thoughts that you have or anything, or something in the past that you're having a hard time letting go of, or anything like that, writing that out and then throwing it into a bonfire and watching it burn is surprisingly cathartic. It's like so
I
nice.
don't
You're
know
like,
if I'm
yeah.
surprised.
Yeah. Well, because you're not really like physically doing much, but like watching
No.
it burn is like really cathartic. And if nothing else, it helps you feel like you have released it in some way, even if you're not looking at it in a spiritual sense. It helps you just get it out of your brain and then you watch it get destroyed. And your brain believes things. It's crazy what you can do with your brain. So your
That's the
brain
truth.
witnessing that be put on paper and then watching it be destroyed just in a purely like scientific sense can actually do a lot for helping you move on from that thing. So this is a great time of the year to do that. I highly suggest bonfires.
Yeah, within safety,
Within reason. Yes.
outside, check your fire
Like
alarms.
we both immediately were like, "Wait, be safe, be safe."
Have a
Yeah,
bucket of
please.
water near you at all times.
Oh my god, please have a bucket of water or a hose that's, like, turned on and by your area, like, something. Please be safe.
Kids
Please
don't
don't.
try this at home.
Yeah,
Tearing
please.
paper also works, y'all. Tearing
Yes,
paper
tearing
also works.
paper. Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of.
For those of you out there that are looking for like a journaling prompt, maybe
Mm.
even, may I suggest what version of you is ready to rest and what version is ready to rise?
Mm.
Something to think about.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and if you wanna share that, you could share it in our comment section or you could join us on Patreon. Maybe we'll start a thread. We have a Discord, and we could start a thread on there and you guys could all share your thoughts on that. That would be fun. Very community driven way to honor this time of year. I love that.
Yeah, light a
Mm.
candle, be present, honor what's been there, and a time
Yeah.
to reflect. And I'm really curious about what version is ready to rise.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then really think about this time of year again. Like we said, this is kind of the start of like the darkest half of the year, right? And this really should be the time of year where we're all resting, right? We weren't really made to be go, 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 go 24/7, 365. That's not really how it
Three,
was
six,
supposed to be. So, this time of year really is, it gets cold just like other animals. They all start to take a break during this time of year. They
the hibernation.
hibernate,
Yeah.
so that really is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be slowing down, really like taking it easy during this time. So, which is hard in corporate America and other corporation companies or corporation countries is what I meant to say.
Mhm.
But try to find ways throughout your day to slow down, to give yourself some more rest, be a little bit softer on yourself. This is the time of year where we start getting into seasonal depression. So, you know, it's going to get darker and with less sun can make you sad, but there's a lot of good that comes with that. I think part of it is because we don't allow ourselves to rest. We try to push through this season. That's not what the season's asking us to do. So try to find ways to rest and give yourself that time to reflect. I think that's a good lesson for us all to try to keep in mind during these times.
Completely agree.
Yeah,
Do
because I
you
think there's a positive spin on like it getting dark and slow and if you really look
Yeah,
at
no,
it,
people
there's
do get really depressed during this time.
yeah,
Take care of yourself.
yeah, and try to find the joy in it. Try to find the joy in the fact that the world is slowing down, that it's
Mhm.
becoming darker. Try to find things that bring you joy within that.
I think that's an important point too, because as it slows down, like we're really getting into that time of year where we want to be in communal space.
Mm,
Like, I think folks often, at least for me at this time of the year, like I really like to do more homebodied things versus like being out and about
yeah,
constantly with the changing weather and all of that. Before we get into Yule on the next round, we're going to be hitting, the traditional American holidays with Thanksgiving. And we all know the problematic things with that. But nonetheless, is a time of year that people get together and gather and eat. And that's
yeah,
often what holidays consist of for a lot of folks, then I think that slowdown is a time to reevaluate, who do I want to spend time with and
Yeah.
how do I want to spend my time?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so good things to keep in mind during this time of year, and it all starts with Samhain. It all starts with this like festival. We're gonna get it all out of our system, party, and then we're gonna slow down and we're gonna take
We
our
go straight
time.
off the summer into into fall and winter. Shut down. Just
Yeah.
kidding.
And then this is, like we said, this is just the start to the series. We're gonna have a whole solstice series, and that's gonna include other minor holidays within there as well. So we'll be having we'll have an episode like this right before Thanksgiving about chosen family. Right? Is that a small
Yeah.
or is that a full episode? It's a small one,
Either
right?
way, it's an
I don't know.
episode.
We will have an episode about chosen family right before Thanksgiving, and then we will be having our Yule episode. That'll be a small one like this. So we will have more coming up. We'll probably talk more about what you could do to get through the season and to find joy within this time. It can be a hard time for people. Holidays can be
It
hard.
is. It is. But we'll
Yeah.
get through it together.
Yeah. There's a lot to be thankful for. And
It's
there's a
true.
lot of joy to still find even during this time. So
It's true. It's
hopefully
true.
we can do that. So when the wheel turns again, we'll be gathering for Yule, the winter solstice, to celebrate light returning, warmth shared, and queer rest as resistance.
Yay!
Yay!
Keep showing up even when it's messy.